noise!
Hello and welcome to another edition of Truth and Rhythm. Brought to you by funkinstuff.net, this is the interview show that gets deep in the pocket with contemporary music's foremost masters of the groove. I am your host, Scott Dr. GX Goldfine, musicologist, creative arts journalist, and multimedia pro. Whether you're watching the video version of this show or the audio-only podcast version, I thank you so much for your continued interest and support in this show. If you enjoy this programming, there are several ways to help support Truth and Rhythm, as well as contribute to further enhancements and expansion, plus get some sweet perks and rewards in the process. First, subscribe to the Funk and Stuff channel on YouTube, which is where Truth and Rhythm lives, and be an advocate by spreading the word among fellow funk, jazz, and R&B music lovers. Second, join Truth and Rhythm's new membership program through Patreon, which features 3 tiers for truth believers, truth seekers, and truth crusaders. You can also submit a direct donation to the cause anytime at funkinstuff.net. At that site, which is loaded with awesome content, you can also purchase the book Everything's on the One, The First Guide of Funk. Shop for official Truth and Rhythm and Funk and Stuff merchandise, and use the Amazon links for all of your online purchases, which allocates a percentage to this show. Sponsorship opportunities are available as well. Contact me directly at scottg@funkinstuff.net. For those of you who go the extra step in supporting the show, you have my heartfelt gratitude for allowing us to continue to shine the light on those special artists whose quest is to find truth in rhythm. Hey, before we get started with today's show, I just want to draw your attention to new merchandise. Funk and Stuff and Truth and Rhythm designs are in, and they look pretty darn cool. So show your support, help support the program, and show off some stylish merchandise and apparel. Only at the Funk and Stuff store. I'm delighted to welcome to the Truth and Rhythm Mothership Grammy-winning producer and recording engineer David Rivkin, better known as David Z. The older brother of Prince and the Revolution drummer Bobby Z, David is an important contributor to the Minneapolis sound, based around innovative drum machine rhythms and synthesizer leads and accents, as he worked with Prince and protege acts like The Family, Sheila E., Maserati, St. Paul, Jill Jones, T.C. Ellis, Maite, and others. He also produced the #1 smash, She Drives Me Crazy by the Fine Young Cannibals, and worked with alternative pop rock artists like a-ha, the Go-Gos, the BoDeans, Terri Nunn and Bananarama. Later, he became steeped in the blues, collaborating with Kenny Wayne Shepherd, Jonny Lang, the Eric Gales Band, Buddy Guy, Etta James, John Mayall, Government Mule, and many others. That's an impressive range and spans so many recordings that I have owned and performers I have seen on stage. David, it's great to have you. How are you?
I'm good, thanks.
Where are you coming to us from today?
Where am I? I'm in North Hollywood, California.
Okay. Well, I'm from Los Angeles originally, now in North Carolina, but I miss it a bit out there.
Yeah. Yeah, I lived in the South for a long time. I lived in Nashville for 14 or 15 years, I think. And I moved out here. My kids all moved out here, so I had to be with them.
So how long about have you been out there now?
Well, I've been here quite a while, about 11 years.
Oh, all right. Yeah,
I'm older than I look.
Well, I'm such a fan of your work. I was a disc jockey throughout the 1980s, so in clubs. So I spun so many of your songs and the 12-inch versions in particular. So kept, the dance floors packed throughout the 80s,
Yep.
you know.
I
Um,
like, I like to keep people moving.
yeah, well, it definitely did. You had the right blend. Um, your background is so interesting in terms of, you and your brothers. What was it like growing up in that household, and how did all of you come to be artistic?
I don't know how we got it. My mom's artistic. She did a lot of decorations, and she had a business for a long time of party decorations. And I guess that's where we got it. I don't think my dad he didn't have a speck of art in him. So either that or it just came naturally. But I was the first one to be a rebel and join a rock and roll band. And my brothers basically followed. My brother Steve, who is now a film editor, he was in a band with my brother Bobby, who's a drummer. So we had a basement that was filled with bands, filled with loud amplifiers.
And growing up in Minneapolis, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
South Minneapolis. Yes.
So were you I don't know the area really at all. What was your proximity like to the Peterson family, for example?
Well, interesting enough, we're related. My cousin Stuart, my first cousin, is married to Patty Peterson, so we're all one big conglomerate. And they, I was always on par with Ricky Peterson. We kind of grew up through the business together, and he's playing with Fleetwood Mac right now. He's grown up. He's a lot younger than me, but we always, I mean, Petersons were a very big part of, or they still are, a very big part of music in Minneapolis.
Those must have made for some interesting family gatherings, I would think. People grabbing whatever they could to make some music.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of us. I don't know. We don't usually get together everyone at once, but actually last night I just had dinner with two of the Petersons. So yeah, it's a big happy family.
Wow. Um, so you said that you were in a band first, I think. What were you playing and what kind of music?
I started with folk music because that's how old I am, and I had a duo, and then I got introduced to the electric guitar, which I fell in love with, and before you know it, I had a band. I started in a group called the Chancellors, uh, and it progressed from there. I had several bands, and I back when I was starting bands, there weren't that many musicians in that existed. Nobody thought it was a cool thing to do. It was you had to just love music to be involved, and that's what I always tell people. If you don't love music, it's not worth it because it's a vicious business. But yeah, I love music, and I played in many bands growing up. We toured all over, the Midwest, and then we toured all over the United States. So we supported ourselves pretty well that way, and I just settled into a way of life like that.
So what year about was that? That's like the mid 70s?
That was 1967.
Oh, wow, that far back.
Yeah,
Yeah.
1967, 1968, um, and then 1968 and 9, I moved to Los Angeles because I was frustrated. I was a promotion man for A&M and Elektra Records, in Minneapolis, and they would give me lists of records to try and push to the disc jockeys at the radio stations, and a lot of them I wound up listening to and going, I don't like this. I can do better. So I went out. I went to L.A. Came to L.A. and I fell in with a bunch of writers, and I got a I got signed by A&M Records as a writer, uh, and I did that for like 4 years. Wrote a bunch of songs. None of them ever really did much because I don't know. People were looking for all different kinds. There was a big difference between writers and people that were self-contained players, and I could just write songs for people that didn't write songs. It was kind of a limited market, but then doing that, I got frustrated with that, and I moved back to Minneapolis and fell into a recording studio. I had nothing, I had no knowledge of how to work a recording studio. I was just a songwriter. And make a long story short, I hung around there, and I learned how to be an engineer just by because no one else was doing it, and what they were doing was didn't sound very good, and I was really interested in making the sounds three-dimensional. So I put myself on my own quest to make better recordings, and that's how I looped into the engineer business.
So were you getting time at a studio owned by someone else, or did you get a hold of your own equipment, or what?
Well, I went to work at a studio that was in the ghetto in Minneapolis, which is North Minneapolis, and people would come up there. They had a racket going where they'd have the bank on the corner finance recordings. Wasn't kosher, but I got to do a lot of recordings, and I got to learn, made mistakes on other people, and in the meantime, I met a lot of great musicians. And we always wondered why Minneapolis didn't have a music scene. There was nothing happening. I mean, maybe one group or another in a, a lot of groups. I mean, there's a great amount of musicians there that were frustrated, going, "Why can't we do something on the radio? Why can't we?" And it was frustrating. Everyone was, you know, trying to get on the radio. They were trying to make songs that would work, and we all were trying to do the same thing. So that's where the state of things were at back then.
So at some point you crossed paths with Prince. I don't know if there's anyone of any kind of fame or recognition that you worked with before Prince. What kind of happened around that time?
I had limited amount of success before Prince. I used to do these every Friday. We do a broadcast from the studio over the radio. It was a big radio station at the time, KQRS, and we did live concerts. And I got to have touring musicians come in, much bigger than the groups that were there at Minneapolis. I mean, I had, hit groups from everywhere, from the South, from, songwriters in Nashville, and all kinds of groups that came through town. The radio station, it was part of a deal where they get promoted and they get to do an hour live every Friday nights on the radio. And it kind of whipped me into shape because I was the engineer. And I kind of organized it, and that it was really great training for me. During the course of that, a friend of mine who was a real estate real estate agent. He brought in this group called Champagne, and it was Prince and Andre Simone and Morris Day, the three of them. They were only probably 15 at the time, and we did a recording for them, not a radio concert, but a recording. It was okay. It came out okay, and wasn't anything spectacular. And about a year later, my friend Owen Husney came in and he said, I'm managing this kid that you recorded before, and his name is Prince, and I want to, he was part of the crowd that we wanted to get things moving and get him signed out of Minneapolis, which was impossible. The record companies wouldn't even come up there. They thought we had buffalo in our backyard. So they wouldn't give us a shot. And then I did this demo with Prince alone where he played everything. And he had everything on a little cassette machine. He'd hum the piano part, and the guitar part, the bass part, and then he'd just play them back one by one. And it was amazing to me because I've never seen anybody that could be that objective and play every instrument and make it sound like it's a lot of people. I did this demo, and then Owen took it to Warner Brothers. He took it to many labels, but Warner Brothers was interested too, and they signed Prince to a deal, and that's how his career began.
Were any of those tracks ones that ended up on that first record of his?
Yeah, Just As Long As We're Together, Soft and Wet, Baby. He re-recorded some of them, but a lot of the original things wound up on the record.
How would you describe his demeanor and personality early on?
He was very determined. He joked around plenty, but he was just focused. He just always saw the laser focus that he has, and he was actually embarrassed to sing in front of. When I was doing a vocal track, my wife walked into the studio, and Prince goes, "Would you turn the lights off? I don't want her to see me singing." And I went, "Wow, that's pretty shy." He was very shy, which later on, I guess, kind of lost that. But he was very shy to begin with, and he wanted to prepare everything in the closet and wouldn't open the door till it was ready. So that was the way he worked, and he was very, very good at every instrument. And for being that young and not ever playing, there was no place in Minneapolis for black groups to play. There were really no clubs. There was no avenue that anybody could go and express themselves, and very, very little in the way of venues to play. So I was amazed at how good he was without having to play anywhere. But that's just inherent of what his talent is.
Did he only sing falsetto, or did he do some? Because the record was all falsetto.
Yeah, no. Well, he did a lot of things falsetto, but he had a really deep voice also. I think he thought the falsetto was his key to success, which it was. But later on, I guess he developed the confidence to sing lower. But yeah, come to think of it, it was a lot of falsetto.
Well, yeah, I remember being surprised when I heard how well he could sing in other registers, on the second, third records, whenever it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had a four octave voice range.
Was he like so confident in what he was doing, or did he solicit much feedback?
Well, I don't recall him being very stubborn about it, but he knew what he was doing, and just because we went yeah or no or I mean, yeah, of course we had to try things, and had to bounce off. He was a total amateur. We had to, or I had to correct him a lot, but not that much. He knew what he was doing. And he made mistakes. He admitted it. He went, that was too much. He knows his first record was just way oversung, and he put way too many voices on it. And, he said it himself. But, it got him somewhere.
So when he got that deal, or word came down that he got the deal, were you just amazed because it was kind of a breakthrough for that area
Yeah.
finally?
Well, the year before he got signed, I just so happened to do a record called Funky Town,
Okay.
which got signed and went worldwide. It's a huge smash. It was in every country in the world, and we just did it from our little studio in Minneapolis. That was basically the first big hit out of there at that time. And I know Prince was jealous, and he was going, I want to do that. I don't. He was always driven by other people's success. I'll never forget when Madonna got a deal for $90 million. This was much later. He was stomping around the studio going, well, she got a deal for $60 million. And he was going, $60 million. I'm going to get a deal for $90 million. I mean, that's kind of what drives him, is the competition. But anyway, getting back to the story.
Could you tell early on back then also, David, that he was very interested in the engineering and recording process as well as the musical part of it?
That he was?
Yeah.
It didn't seem like it. I mean, he didn't really seem like he cared about. Because it sounded good, so he didn't give a shit about how to do that. I think later on he learned that he didn't need that many people around him if he could do it himself, which is his goal. He wanted to self-engineer and self-produce everything. And I was busy. I did other projects.
How surprised were you when Funky Town hit so big? I mean, how did that change your life?
Yeah. Yeah, that was a huge record, and no one expected it. It was really out of the clear blue sky. But I guess that's how things happen.
Yeah. But how did that change your life personally in a musical standpoint?
Well, it changed my career because people would start to come to me then. And, I just realized the power of the media, how strong it was to have a song played over and over and over and over on radio stations. Just completely blew open everything. And there were a lot of people that were jumping on board to try and get that success. And it opened up Minneapolis completely. And, all these people that were behind the scenes, black and white, got a chance to deliver. They saw an avenue. They went, we can do that. And it opened a floodgates where Minneapolis just broke open. Some talented people flooded out of there. Jimmy and Terry and Jesse Johnson and all these, even the white guys, the Replacements.
Replacements, yeah.
Yeah, Replacements and Husker Du, and that was another side of Minneapolis. That was the other genre that came out of that place. We had the dance, black cult music. I don't want to say it's all black, but it wasn't. And then there's the white rebels, the punk people.
Yeah.
It all came to fruition at the same time.
Yeah. It must have been quite a buzz in the air at that point.
Yeah. And I want to say that the success of those songs like Funky Town, and then I mean, Prince wasn't a success right at first. His first album really didn't do anything. And they, luckily, record labels back then would give an artist 3 albums to develop. They invested in their artist. It wasn't like today where if they don't have a hit on the first single, they drop you. Yeah, it wasn't like that. Yeah, his first album wasn't that successful, and actually the black audience didn't like it because it wasn't like Parliament or Funkadelic, or it wasn't the Ohio Players. He was doing something new and different, and it took a long time for even the black people to acknowledge that.
Yeah, I bought that first album that year when I heard Soft and Wet. So I was there from the beginning, and I was actually at his first show he ever did in Los Angeles at the Roxy in '79. So I've been from early on, and yeah, I would say it was more like a Patrice Rushen or Jackson's kind of vibe to it at that time.
Yeah, he was a good friend of Patrice Rushen. She was on the first record. But that kind of music was sort of on the edge. Patrice only had one single that I know of. But, Prince was paving a new direction. And not everybody's going to jump on that right away. Familiarity is the key. And then, his second and third album was what did it for him, because he got funkier and funkier. And he developed his sound.
What was your interaction relationship with him after the first record?
It was a good relationship. He went to California and he did 2 albums by himself. And the third album was I Want to Be Your Lover, and I think that was, or maybe it was the second album, but it proved to him that he could do it. And then we drifted apart and did our own thing. I was busy. Excuse me. And around about the time of Delirious, he called me up, and I kind of came back into the fold and did a little work on Delirious. And then the next album, he wanted me to record live. He was playing live at a club, and it was a show to benefit a Lois Holton. It was a dance instructor that helped him and the band do their choreography. So he did a benefit for them, and that I recorded that. We called in the record plant truck, and that turned into a concert that made up the album Purple Rain, which nobody expected that. I mean, that was just it was the first time I was in the truck recording them. It was a new band, basically, with Wendy and Lisa and Mark Brown on bass. My brother was still playing drums, and Dr. Fink.
How did your brother become involved, and did your brother's involvement help get you back into the fold? Or
my brother actually worked for Owen Husney at his ad company and he was a runner. He went and did all the things and got printing and delivered things. And when Owen took over Prince's management, Bobby became the guy that drove him around, and they hung around together. And Prince didn't drive, so Bobby was the chauffeur. And then he was also wound up in jam sessions because he was already a drummer. And Prince just wanted to jam most of the time. So he wound up in the jam sessions, and that resulted in him being the drummer. So,
and did that kind of help bring you back into mind and get you back involved too, or it had no relationship?
I don't know if that had an effect at all, but I was involved. Yeah.
I think that show you mentioned, David, if I'm not mistaken, was maybe Wendy's first show with Prince.
Well, as the Revolution, yeah. I mean, he had done a couple other gigs in North Minneapolis at a limited club, and that was when they had Gail as the piano player, and Andre is the bass player, and Wendy wasn't there, and it was just like a showcase. Nobody recorded it or anything like that.
Brown Mark was on the show, and I think I remember him saying that Bobby was the one that picked him up at some point.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, they were friends. I mean, Prince didn't have a lot of friends, and they hung. And the thing I have to keep excuse me, thing I have to keep thinking back about is how Prince made a very conscious effort to have a diversified band, white, black, women, men, all different religions. I mean, he made a conscious effort to be like that, and no one has really done that at the time since Sly and the Family Stone, and since Jimi Hendrix, and the black and white combination of people. It was either like a black group or a white group. You had to make a choice. But he made sure it was both. And his first concerts were amazing because they were half black and half white. And that hadn't been done much. It hadn't been done much before. It was great to see the integration.
Mm-hmm. As you were talking about the Purple Rain thing, which was, no one saw that coming at that level. I was at the Rolling Stones show where he got booed off the stage, and so I saw him from the first show on the West Coast and just rise up through all that adversity and get so big. And for me as a fan, it was such a thrill because I had never followed somebody that had done anything like that. And then
had the guts to get bottles thrown at him and still get back on the stage.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's, it was a social, economic, I think everything, and the music was great. It was great. And it bridged all the gaps, but I think he coordinated his social economic rise with the musical rise, and society kind of went along with him, and he broke a lot of rules.
When you came back into the fold working with him, what about him had advanced or changed from your earlier working with him? Because
his presence, his showmanship was completely different. He was confident. He was confident in what he was doing. His attitude was, I want to say uppity, but that's how he changed. He grew confident in himself. It's hard enough to be a musician where you don't have confidence in yourself, but he totally got confidence in himself.
Did anything he do surprise you musically, or did you feel from like the get-go when you first saw him that he had that in him?
I think he developed a system of licks and sounds that no one else had before. He did these horn licks on an Oberheim synthesizer and invented a way to do it that was very profound. Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis copied every single one of them. And I mean, they're great writers, but the Janet Jackson records were actual Prince copies. They could have taken this lick and that lick and put it exactly where they thought. But, he didn't let that bother him. He developed a total style and a total way of playing licks that no one had done before. And these little endings that he had on his licks were very unique. I mean, you could tell a Prince lick from a mile away. It was just the way he did it. Little horn licks. But they didn't turn out to be horn licks, they were synthesizer licks.
When I heard what he was doing on songs like Delirious, right around that time with the synth parts replacing horns and Let's Pretend We're Married, and some of the ways they were used on those songs, I just thought were revolutionary. And at first I was worried that horns were being pushed aside in the early 80s, but he found a way to keep that same flavor in there but make it fresh.
Yeah, he found a way to make it work in a funky way, which was it appealed to everybody.
So what else were you doing in that camp? Once you came back in, what was your role?
Well, for Prince or for other people?
For Prince, and then you branched out into some of the other associated acts.
Yeah. Well, I mean, after Purple Rain, that was a huge blowout. We started doing a lot of projects for his label, Paisley Park. He signed Maserati, which were a friend of his, and I was put in charge of that. He signed Jill Jones, which was a friend of his, and I was put in charge of that. He signed The Family with Paul Peterson and Susanna, and I was put in charge of that. He had me running. I mean, he called me to LA one day and he said, come on out for a couple days. I want to talk to you. I'm in the studio. And I went, okay. So I threw a couple shirts in the bag and I went out there. And the minute I got there, he goes, we're going to do this group called Maserati. I'll be in this room. You can be in that room. You're going to be here for about 3 months. I went, 3 months? I only brought a shirt. I had to run out and buy all clothes, new clothes. But that's the way he ambushed you. He did the same thing in New York with Jill Jones's album. But yeah, I was running for him. In the meantime, I did other records like Fine Young Cannibals and Jesse Johnson, Netta Cherry. I can't even think of them all, but I had a lot of things going on.
Yeah, I even saw General Kane on there. I just had Kevin Goins was just on the show the other day from that band, and Trey Stone has been on also. But so when he said he wanted you to do those acts, though, what were you doing for them exactly?
Well, it was different. It's different with every act. With some of the acts, like Jill Jones, I had to pull the band together in New York. I had to record the tracks. A lot of times he'd do the drum and bass and send me the drum and bass, and we had to add to it. In the case of The Family, he did all the tracking, and I had to do all the vocals and mixing. So I did some tracking too, but it was fun when he was doing it because I got to work with him. And I used a lot of great players. I pulled in Steve Stevens from Billy Idol's group to play guitar. One of my favorite guys. He was terrific. And there was I had a lot of freeway. I had a lot of room to do it. Pulled in Steve Gadd. I did hired players and helped arrange and did all the vocals. That was the hardest part because Prince would sing the vocal track and he'd want the vocalist, whoever it may be, to sing exactly what he was singing. And that's not easy because he's a seasoned singer. He's got a way of doing things that not everybody can do. And I had to punch in every other word with a lot of people. That was back when we had tape machines. You could punch them in. But yeah.
So was this at Sunset Sound, or where was it mostly?
It was wherever I was. In New York, we used Electric Lady Studio. Sunset Sound, we used in L.A. In Minneapolis, we used Prince's Warehouse. It was wherever it was.
What do you think you learned from Prince in terms of music making or working in a studio? I mean, I'm sure it went both ways, but what would you say you picked up from him?
Just a certain way of doing things, and that it's okay to make mistakes, because a lot of people are so uptight they don't want any little mistake, and they make it over and over and over. But Prince just was so like, if he made a mistake, he was like, I meant to do that. It was like Pee Wee Herman, and we'd laugh about it. He didn't care. He was so good that he'd play something and it would be it. That'd be it. There wouldn't be any redos or fixing or punching in or anything. So yeah, to keep the flow going, that's what I learned. You don't block the groove. Never stop the groove.
So, was it challenging? Did you feel like you had to keep up with him at times?
I don't think we ever had any serious disagreement, ever. It's funny, I did not work for him. I only worked alongside of him. So he never had the employer-employee relationship with me like everyone else in his camp. He could call him up at 3 a.m. and go, get out here. And we're right now. He couldn't do that with me because I didn't work for him. So I think that led to a much better relationship.
I've enjoyed hearing those some of the stories out of Sunset Sound about how he would be in different moods, and that would reflect in sort of how he approached a session and things like that. Did you see a lot of that too?
Not so much the mood thing. I mean, he was very moody, but I don't know if I'd say it affected one way or another. It might have affected what songs he wrote, but he was very observant of everything. And I remember at Paisley Park, on the way to Paisley Park, there was a church, and they always had something profound on the board out in front of the church. And I drove by there one day, and it said, well done is better than well said, which was, I guess, an old quote. And we got to the studio, and I came up with this drum beat on my machine. I used an SP1200, and he was going out with Kim Basinger at the moment, and I was doing something in Studio B, and he walks in with Kim Basinger holding hands, and he goes, what are you doing? And I'd been dealing with enough, so I knew how to approach him, and I said, you're not going to like it. It's just something I've been working on. He goes, let me hear it. So I played him the beat, had a drum bass and conga beat, and he went, give me a piece of paper. And he sat down and he wrote lyrics in 10 minutes at the most. Just sitting on the couch, he goes, give me a mic. And he went out there and he sang this song, Well Done, which is something that I was, he had seen on the church board that day. And it was amazing to me how he could just flip something around and make a whole song out of a suggestion of a lyric. But it was a pretty funny day, and he told Kim Basinger, he goes, we're going to be busy. Go make us some popcorn, Kim. She goes, okay. She went and made some popcorn and brought it back in. And I thought that was just a funny exchange.
So that was around the time of the Batman soundtrack, like late 80s?
Yeah.
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 So I think she had a credit on the Scandalous Sex Suite song.
Yeah.
Remember? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, beautiful girl. They were very tight at the time. And you could see why she was a movie star. She just had perfect measurements. Really beautiful. Nice person, too.
So you didn't see so much of that in Minneapolis, I'm guessing.
Not before that, no. No, she had a southern accent, too.
Was there a particular song or track that you worked on that you're especially happy with or proud of during your Paisley Park or Prince period?
Oh, there's a few of them. Absolutely. Erotic City was one of my favorites because he used the organ pedals as the bass, the little, instead of a bass guitar. I thought that was cool as hell. We used to talk about using instruments in a very unconventional way. We used to joke about putting guitars underwater. What would that sound like? And he was very brave that way. And a lot of songs he didn't use any bass, like When Doves Cry. There was several songs like that. But as far as tracks go, I mean, my favorite recordings that I've done with him, I mean, I'm pretty sure Purple Rain's up there. I mean, I'm kind of sick of hearing it, but at the time I didn't realize how big of a smash that was going to be. And that was a real rewarding experience to record that. And really, the only thing that was fixed on there, I mean, it was a live recording, everything. All his vocal, his guitar, everything. It was a live recording. And the only thing he did was replace the bass, because that bass that Mark used was wireless. And at the time, wireless wasn't up to par, and the frequency wasn't really represented, and it didn't hold full frequency. So replaced that and then added a string section with the orchestra. But otherwise, the rest of that track is as is. Yeah, I've done quite a few that I think are my best work. I think Kiss is my best work. I did most of that. And, that was an experiment in science. I gated the guitar to the hi-hat, which is a process you can synchronize what they call a gate. And the guitar did a rhythm that nobody could even play. It was a funky part that very hard to play by yourself. It's electronically driven. So that I'm really proud of too.
Now he took that back from Maserati, infamously,
He
right?
gave us a cassette. You can find it on I'm sure YouTube. He gave us a cassette with him just doing a straight acoustic guitar strum, and he was singing one verse. That was it. And it sounded like a folk song the way he gave it to us. It sounded like Stephen Stills or something. And we took it back and we went, what the hell are we going to do with that? And I started programming the LM1, the drum machine. And in order to fill out the rhythm, I did what he did. And then I went, nah, that's not funky. That's really, really straight ahead. So my co-engineer, we gated the hi-hat on the drum machine to the acoustic guitar, and it made this shimmering, completely funky rhythm that no one could do. And then I added a piano from a song that I always liked. It was a Bo Diddley song called Say Man, and the piano was like, it was like a little trickle of a piano in there. We put that in there, and then the guys from Maserati sang backup. The main guy from Maserati sang the lead, but it was an octave lower than what Prince sang. And then the guys in Maserati sang backup. I had them do a part from a Brenda Lee song called Sweet Nothings, which was big when I was a kid. And they sang, eh. That was the background for her song. We just stole it. And it was only 3 notes, so who cared? But he took it. I went home that night. We were working on it all night. And I went back to the hotel and came back the next morning, and the tape was not in my room. And I went, where's the tape? And Coke, who was my engineer, he said, Prince came in and he took it. I went into Prince's studio and I said, what's going on? You took my tape. He goes, it's too good for you guys. I took it back. And by then, he had already put his voice, and he already put the Papa's Got a Brand New Bag guitar on it. This is exactly James Brown's beginning. And it was done. And then we mixed it. It was only 9 tracks. I had kick drum on one track, all the other drums on the other track. There was only snare and hat. And then I had a trigger track with a hi-hat that nobody even heard. It wasn't in the mix. And that was it. I mean, very, very, you could do it. You could have done it at your house.
Yeah, it was radically sparse.
Yeah.
Sound.
Yeah, the record company gave me a hard time about that. They thought it sounded like a demo. And I thought it was cool. Prince thought it was cool. The record company went, no, you really fucked it up. It's bad. You really fucked it up. We're not going to release that. And I was really heartbroken. And Prince said to them, you're going to take that because I'm not giving you another single. And sure enough, they took it, and it was so different that it caught everyone's ear. I mean, he's done a lot of things that were so different from what was happening at the time that it was a shock value.
Yeah, that's why one of the main reasons I loved him. But in that every record, you never knew what to expect, and it would just be a quantum leap sometimes, and the changes and just keeping up with him, incredible.
Yeah.
And that record too that went on Parade had so many new interesting sounds, and Girls and Boys, and
I love
just
Girls.
Track after track was just radical. I mean,
yeah, it's great stuff.
Do you think there's any chance Maserati would have had any success had they put it out on their own?
No, it didn't sound the same. It was, with the singer singing an octave lower, it didn't have the full impact. I mean, Prince's voice is key there.
And did you work also on Sign of the Times tracks? Because that title track also was just kind of continued that real sparse kind of feel,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah, I didn't work on that.
That was a turbulent time in there when you changed the band and everything, and
Yeah,
um, but you continued working on different projects even when that turbulence was kind of going on when you changed bands and things like that.
yeah, yeah. I didn't. I never. I was still at Paisley Park.
How was it for you when that finally actually opened and there was an actual Paisley Park?
Yeah, I had an office upstairs for 5 years, and I had a lot of people coming in and out. A lot of groups coming in and out. I mean, they came from everywhere. Had groups from Sweden, Norway. A lot of English groups came through. Australian artists. Yeah, it was a great place until people got sick of coming to 31 below zero, and I got kind of sick of it too because it's cold.
Well, like Prince would say, it kept the bad people away.
It did. We had plenty of our own bad people, so we didn't need any more.
David, of the other projects you worked on that you had mentioned many of them, is there one or two of those that you felt the best about, the most fulfilled about, that you thought were most successful, whether it's Jill Jones or whoever?
Yeah, well, Jesse Johnson I thought was fantastic. I did his album in his studio in his basement, and it came out terrific. And I thought he was really good. He unfortunately got undersold by the label. I don't think they did the right thing. He had a couple hits, but
A&M again, your old nemesis.
yeah, well, it was A&M. I worked for A&M 5 different ways. I counted from promotion man to A&R to engineer to producer. I was even an artist on A&M back in my early days. I was in a band that got signed to A&M, so I guess I can count that too. But yeah, I've worked for them a lot. Um, yeah.
Now, Jesse's kind of enigmatic uh, guy. What can you share us about Jesse in terms of a talent and what he was like to work with?
He was fantastic. He was great. He could play. He could play a lot of things that too. I mean, he had a great sense of what he was doing. Great sense of funk. He had his own funkiness. Um, I just think he was kind of put off by the Prince experience. He wasn't real happy about it. Everything that happened, which is unfortunate because he could have used that to keep going instead of putting up a big argument. I mean, he didn't want to join the Time reunion recently. He wouldn't even join them, which I thought was pointless. Why not? I mean, it's only history. It's not like they care about what you feel now. You know, he was part of the time.
I love his guitar playing, and yeah, that
Yeah,
first record was great.
yeah. There's a couple songs on his record. I thought they really blew it by not releasing them. Um, he did this great bass line on the synthesizer that a song called "Let's Have Some Fun." It was one of the funkiest bass parts ever, but they didn't put it out, and maybe he turned them off. I don't know, but I think his personality got in the way of his success, which is unfortunate.
Then there was that weird thing where he had the Shockadelica album, but then the track was actually put out by Prince on a B-side. I don't know what happened there.
I don't know either. I wasn't involved in that album.
There's much more to this great Truth and Rhythm interview. Just continue on to the next part of the episode. Also, be sure to subscribe to this channel. If you've already done so, please share it with friends. And become a member by joining Truth and Rhythm on Patreon or consider donating at funknstuff.net. Thank you very much.